just stopping and appreciating the beauty, so good for your mental health.
Just kind of walk around, do some yoga, like to jump in lakes.
That is just a stunning high country alpine lake to camp at.
Starry nights here in Montana. Oh my goodness, you are going to want to sleep outside your tent. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally. This is Madison.
Hello.
We are partners in life and we are also business partners. So when we met almost 3 years ago, we basically couldn't right off the bat stop talking about backpacking. I think it was like our second conversation ever. So Madison, a big entrepreneur, was the business brains behind the whole idea. She was like, Sally, why don't we turn our dream into a lifestyle? And basically, long story short, because it is a long story, we got there and we're here now today. So thank you again, Stephanie and Maya, for having us and 57 hours. What we're going to cover today. So we're going to cover why we backpack, the aspect of grounding in nature and mindfulness, huge proponent, gear and food, which is all included. We're going to say this a couple times because you might not believe it or understand it, but once we go over gear and food, you're going to be really grateful. So all of this is included. You don't need to travel with any gear. We're going to talk about bears and safety, potty time outside, navigation and backcountry skills, and then the obvious natural bonuses like you see in this picture.
All right, so just to orient everyone, we are located in Montana, which if you're from out of the country, that is in the northwest-ish part of the United States, just next to the Canadian border. So that little red dot is where we are located. So northwest Montana. This is a more zoomed in photo. We live in the town of Whitefish, which is about 30 minutes west of Glacier National Park, and we guide our backpacking trips in the Flathead National Forest along the Swan Range, which is a beautiful range that we are so privileged to have access to up here. So a little bit about me. I was raised here in Montana and in the Seattle area as well, but the Montana mountains have just been home to me for so long. I have been lucky enough to grow up in a family that values hiking, backpacking, fishing, skiing, all the things. So we're pretty much always outside doing something fun. Prior to becoming a guide, I got to do some great things in college. I got to sail around the world, and then I lived in Japan and New Zealand for a while. But ultimately, the Montana mountains kept calling me back. And so I've been guiding for a little over 6 years, and it is just my passion. I love showing folks the natural beauty of Montana and showing them that they're capable of accessing it too.
This is one of the reasons I moved to Montana, but I'm originally from Texas, grew up traveling all the time. I was lucky enough to have a family that my mom took us out on adventures. We would, drive around the continental US and visit all the national parks we could, camp, do all the things possible. Pretty sure first time I went backpacking was high school, and I was confused when we were leaving the forest. It was like, why are we leaving? I want to live here. So I'm just Madison as well. We just want to live outside. And that's another reason why we wanted to turn our dream into a lifestyle, because being outside, just as you can see on my face, just big smile. It makes us both really happy. And we're really happy to be bringing other folks, women especially, into the backcountry.
So the third guide that we have with us is Frankie. She's the fluffy guide. She is our pup. She's half Great Pyrenees, blue heeler, and she's our bear dog. So where we guide trips is on public land that is allowed to have dogs and cattle out there. Frankie is really a working dog for us. She can sense bears before we can. So in theory, she's like a low budget security system. Every morning she gets up and runs around the camp, does like a little perimeter sweep, and then she comes back and sits in front of typically our tent and just kind of like puffs her chest up and makes sure nothing enters camp, which is a pretty cool benefit. The dog next to her is Utah, our nephew, and we'll get into him in a second. A question we get asked a lot is, we want to bring our dog backpacking, and that's great. We love dogs backpacking, but really, should you? So to be clear, we are pro bring your dog into the backcountry. It is way more fun with dogs. But as you can see here in the picture on the left, Frankie has her own backpacking backpack. She's used to carrying that weight. She carries all of her own food, her medical equipment, her water, her dishes, everything that is related to dogs, she carries it. But so she's used to this kind of environment. And as you can see next to her, Utah is looking a little worried there. He's a sweet boy, but this was his first backpacking trip. And the first night he was sleeping with his mom in her tent, and he had a bit of a panic attack and ended up clawing through the tent. So he ended up sleeping in our tent the next night, and he was just a little concerned because it was new for him. So with all that to be said, if you've never taken your dog into the backcountry and your dog's never slept in a tent, or maybe been around bears or something, it's just something to consider. It's not a no, but just, think about it, maybe do some tent training.
It's something we'd love to talk about. If you ever wanted to, we could talk about it for hours, and then also going over the training plan for your dog, which is exposure.
It is. We are really lucky to live next to the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex. It is the largest protected wilderness area in the lower 48. And the trips that we guide border the Bob Marshall, but they also will dip into the Bob Marshall. And what makes the Bob, we call it the Bob so special is that it's like the Old West, what I imagine like the Western frontier to look like back in the day. There's no motorized equipment. You can't even run a chainsaw back there. So it's truly a wild space. And we do an annual all ladies trip with our girlfriends out there. And so this is a photo from one of our trips, searching for a campsite and not having a lot of luck.
So this is where we guide. This is what it looks like, I would say 99% of the time. As you can see, the trail is right here on the left, right next to the water. So a lot of our routes, we're going to be hiking along the water. And then at certain points, we're going to be looking down on lakes that we were just walking along. So like even coming up on this ridge line. And then believe it or not, you've been hiking up for an hour and you're like, wow, we're still going. This is so gorgeous. You're still headed to a lake. So we have alpine lakes, which there are lakes higher and higher, and you get to experience that with us, which is my first time, which was a very long time ago, experiencing that. It was kind of mind-blowing to know that there are lakes above us.
Tiered lakes,
and they get more and more gorgeous. That's just a little spoiler alert. Here is another picture of us on a backpacking trip. We had just woken up from a little power nap. We decided to kind of lounge, which I'll get into in another really gorgeous picture. We're just kind of lounging for like a couple of hours and having a little photo shoot and just kind of jaw drop, eyes wide, drooling at the view.
Just connecting
with how gorgeous and wonderful it is. Here is where we live, our area come fall. So the tamaracks start to change color. You can see the snows coming in, snow-capped mountains. We highly recommend visiting this area any time of the year. We have a long winter, but those shoulder seasons can be gorgeous. And then summer is just stunning. I wish it was a little longer, but I can't control that. So this is Holland Lake on the trips that we guide. So this lake that we're going to be walking along it for a while. And then at a certain point, we get high enough to where this lake looks pretty tiny. And again, those gorgeous mountains in the background, clear skies, beautiful sunshine, and awesome reflections on the water.
So we're going to talk about why we backpack. For me, a huge reason is connection. I have never in my experience of backpacking had a bad backpacking trip because the vibe was off with people. Like we end up having really cool, meaningful conversations with one another, things that maybe you wouldn't talk about when you're in the comfort of your home because you have your cell phone, all the things to distract. So we've been able to build quite a beautiful community out of just backpacking. Of course, nature and the beauty, fresh air, that's all really good for us. I mean, as Sally has mentioned, and she'll talk about more, just stopping and appreciating the beauty that we have around us is so good for your mental health. And then as for stress-free, this is one of my favorite things. I have a few companies and I love stepping out into the backcountry and putting my phone on airplane mode and being like, great, I can't answer emails. I'm just out here with my pup and my friends and life is good. But with that being said, there are things in the backcountry. It's a different type of stress. I think it's like a healthier stress. Everything in life gets pared down to the basics. Like, okay, well, if we want tea, we have to boil our water, which means we have to go and get water, and then we have to filter it and so on and so forth. So it's a different type of to-do list out there, and it's a lot more meaningful. I find it kind of pares life down. So some more reasons why we backpack: body awareness. We're really big on listening to your body, what it's saying to you. Do you want more miles? Do you need less miles? Do you need to go sit in a cold lake and ice bath your legs for a while? We're all about whatever our bodies are telling us. We're not a big fan of pushing our bodies to the point that they're broken. That was what our early 20s were for, and we're over that phase. There's a lot of movement on backpacking trip because obviously you're hiking every day from spot to spot, but what is equally important is the stillness. So we really encourage our guests to find stillness, whether that is laying under a tree or basking in a ray of sunshine, and just sitting there and grounding, connecting into nature. And of course, fun. When you're out in the backcountry with a group of ladies in particular, just like the silliest things happen. Inside jokes are formed, giggles. You're just like, oh, well, this was ridiculous. And we just always come out beaming. And this is a picture of us actually headed into a backpacking trip. And we're already just like having a great time on the car ride over. And that trip only got better.
Speaking of silliness and goofiness, this is us on the route that we're talking about mostly during this. This is actually us leaving our base camp. So night 1, we're staying at Upper Holland. Day 2, we hike to a lake. We set up base camp. It only takes 2-ish miles to get there, which is not a long time. And then once we set up base camp, as in setting up our tents, getting everything kind of sorted for when we return, we're able to go on this little jaunt, which is great. It's like 5 miles round trip. So 2.5 miles without weight on your back. It's really this nice. Great break to just take your pack off, take your little day pack. You can see in my pocket, I have a water filter. Other than that, I think you and I combined everything into one pack, and then the other 3, I think, combined into 1 or 2 packs. So it's just a great opportunity to kind of feel free and light on your feet and go have some fun without having weight on your back. This is another ladies' trip. We were in search of a campsite, and it was great. I think we were like making bets on how much longer we were going to be hiking. The map said it was a flat area, which it was decently flat. But of course, with the plants and all of the growth, we were like, wow, we can't set up a tent here. So it was just funny. We were just kind of poking fun, like, you bet this, I bet this. And I think no one won in the end.
No one won. It took way longer than expected.
It was a funny day. So, but as you can see, it was a gorgeous area and I had no complaints continuing to hike. It was great. We stopped a lot. Grounding in nature. So we are big fans of taking breaks, of basking in the sun like Madison is doing here, just kind of grounding in nature. I love to take my shoes off, put my little toes in the dirt, just kind of walk around, do some yoga. I like to jump in lakes. I like to climb trees. Sometimes I'm like, hey, that looks like a good tree to climb. I'll go climb the tree. This is us kind of just hanging at that first campsite on the trip that we're talking about. We had a fire ban this summer, so unfortunately we couldn't have a bonfire. Sun is out till it's bright until like 10 p.m. So that wasn't the issue. And we had a great time anyway. We actually had friends bring fishing poles on that trip. So some of our friends, before I woke up, they kind of walked around the lake, went fishing, caught a couple fish, catch and release. And they had their permits for the season, sent the fish back in the water, came back just like glowing, like we've had the best morning. And it was like 7 a.m. at this point. I was like, wow, this is like, why are you awake? Day. So that picture we were hugging in earlier, this was over to the right. So this view, this is what I like to call like a short mileage opportunity day. We were hiking and we stopped for, I think, 4 hours.
We did.
Took naps, skipped rocks, made tea, played card games. And just kind of like, I loved watching the sun, like as the day was going by, the sun was changing and like the shadows were changing. It was really cool. We were blasted by the sun and then we got kind of chilly when coverage came. It was a good day.
So food. Well, first of all, this is photo evidence of us being bad dog moms, letting Frankie lick our human food. But again, that's also a great benefit of bringing dogs into the backcountry is so we practice leave no trace ethics. So everything we take in, we take out. And having a dog, it's like having a little Roomba on call. So if we're messy eaters and dropping crumbs, then she just comes through and like sucks it all up, which is awesome for us. But really for food, we commit a lot of resources to having healthy, tasty food out there in a wide variety. So a lot of our focus is on sourcing organic, non-GMO backcountry meals. And a lot of the companies that we were working with are actually moving in the direction of compostable packaging or biodegradable packaging, which is amazing for so many reasons. But again, before the trip starts, we let everyone go through and pick out what flavors they like, and they can, choose that and customize what sounds good. We're not going to like impose a one size fits all for everyone. And we can also accommodate to dietary needs. So I myself am gluten and dairy free, not by choice. And I love gluten. And we can accommodate to those things, or if someone's vegan or vegetarian, we can make that happen.
Water filtration. Believe it or not, this is something that some people don't think of when they're going on their first backpacking or camping trip. So if you don't have access to water, if you don't have a water source, you are packing in the water that you're going to be taking on a trip. Now, for our trips, we have so many water resources, lakes, rivers, everything and kind of all over. So in this picture, we are using a Katadyn bee-free. It's basically this really lightweight, compactable water filter where the mouthpiece, so you can squirt it into your mouth, or as Madison's doing, she's putting it straight into my water bottle, which is our top technique we like to use. There's also Life Straw, which is a water bottle like the one I'm holding, but the mouthpiece is the filter. So you just scoop up water and you can drink straight from it. It filters quickly, but you can't like chug it like you would if you had just, I don't know, run a marathon or something. Water filter pumps are like the OG sturdy workhorse. Those are great. We have nothing against them. They just maybe take a little longer, I would say, but they work just as great. Boiling water is another great option. It takes longer. So in the middle of the day, we're not going to probably, I mean, on those short mileage opportunities, if we would, and we do. But usually we boil water in the mornings and the evenings for tea, also for food. So when we make our food in the backcountry, it comes in a package. You open that package and it's dehydrated food that you add the boiling water to. So once you add that, stir it, read the directions. Usually you wait like 5 or 7 minutes. I would say distract yourself because I'm so hungry at that point that I'm so ready to eat. But anyway, boiling water, putting that in your food, you're ready to go. And then another option is iodine pills. Plop them in water, wait just a little bit.
So bears and safety, we are really big on safety. I consider myself a safety nerd. I don't like to make myself feel uncomfortable, and therefore I don't like to make anyone else feel uncomfortable. So with bears in particular, we're really intense about smells. We'll get into the bear hang in a second, but we focus on gathering all our smells at the end of the day at camp and then putting them all in one area for the bear hang, which I said we'll get to. But here where we are located in Montana is the largest concentration of grizzly bears in the continental US, so outside of Alaska. I don't say that to scare anyone. I say that just to kind of bring awareness, like we are in grizzly territory. We are entering into their home, their habitat. But with that being said, I've been hiking here for 30 years and I have yet to deploy bear spray, which we all carry. You'll have bear spray. We go over how to use it. It's basically high-powered prepper spray. It is not like bug spray. You do not spray it on yourself. I've never had a negative encounter to the point that we've had to spray a bear, partly due to the fact that we hike typically with at least 4 people. And at least in our area and the lower 48, there's no recorded incident of a bear attack in a group of 4 or more. And our trips hold up to 10 guests with the 2 guides. So that's 12 people. Chances of having a negative bear encounter are really slim.
And at least 1 dog, which is, again, she's there for safety.
So I mentioned earlier bear hang. This is where all our smells go. The bear hang part of every trip is really fun. It's like one of my favorite parts, but ironically, I'm like horrible at it. Sally's like the reigning champ. You basically put your food, your chapstick, bug spray, anything that has a smell into this bag, and then we find a tree and then we throw a rock over and hoist it up. A lot of other areas use bear canisters for their food. We don't do that up here, mainly because grizzlies can kind of get into anything. And it's not uncommon for a grizzly to find your bear canister, your bear box, and then play with it and knock it around and like that it's lost and you don't have your food. It would just really be a big bummer to wake up and see your food floating in the middle of the lake.
So here's an example of us hanging around our campsite. Behind our friend there, that is our bear hang. It's quite a few bags that we've pulled up there. But as you can tell, there are no tents around. You don't see where we're staying because we want our bear hang to be at least like 30 yards away from where we're sleeping, where we're cooking, where we're eating, all those things. And yeah, as Madison was mentioning, paracord, we have sturdy carabiners. You tie a rock to one end, you try and you try and you try until you get it over a branch. And this is a fun like team bonding thing.
This is the part that Sally's good at and I'm horrible at.
Not every time I'm good at it, but we've had our moments. But yeah, we've had a lot of, I was sore the next day from laughing so hard at our group. We had a really funny group we were with and they were just shouting the whole time, which was also great bear safety shouting. Yeah. We whoop a lot, like whoop, whoop. But anyway, you throw it over, you pull it up, and then you're tying the end of the paracord back to the trunk of the tree just to keep it up there. And first one up is typically the one who goes over. It's like, oh, I want to brush my teeth, or I don't know.
Gotta go to the bear hang.
Yeah, gotta go to the bear hang. So not only are we potentially going to encounter bears or see them from a far distance, we might hear wolves in the distance. We do have elk in the area, moose. We have mountain lions, little ground squirrels. Some might call them micro bears. But these are animals that, sure, when you see them on the screen right now, that might be concerning if they were that far away. Again, with our group size and the fact that we'll have a dog, maybe more than just one, we are not concerned about encountering them at a close distance. I will say, if we were to encounter any wild animal, any size from a distance, incredible. We would love that experience, but we will never approach them. So that is something that we will, of course, go over while we're on the trip and before. Okay, so this is what your pack should look like when you are going on a trip with us. So this is the finalized pack, and I'm about to go over what goes into it. As you can see, everything's kind of tucked in there nicely, hooked on. For a shorter trip, 3-day trip, we wouldn't recommend packing it to be more than 40 pounds. I would say stay closer to the 30 pounds. It's just easier for you because of more gear and food that adds up. It's going to be more to like 35 to 45 pounds. However, these backpacks have a hip strap. So that's going to take all of the weight from being kind of like bounding on your upper body, shoulders, upper back. It's going to stick to your hips, and it's really going to relieve some pressure, which is, I probably couldn't do it without these backpacks. They're incredible. So in the left picture, we have everything laid out for you, what we would take on a trip. This top sack in the left corner is where all of your clothes, buffs, socks, everything you're going to kind of compile into there. And then once you do that, as you can see in the right picture, we've got 2 stuffed sacks. We've got everything you might need where you're going to know where it is. There are smaller zippers in the backpack, and then that big open compartment.
On our trips, we provide all gear. With that being said, if you have your own backpacking gear and you'd like to bring it, by all means, bring your own backpacking gear. But the things we do not provide are like your hiking shoes and your clothes, rain gear, so that stuff, which we send out a pre-trip email a few months in advance and let everyone know what they should be packing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, something I forgot to mention in the water filtration is 1 is none and 2 is 1. So with this gear right here, things like water filter, maybe even headlamp for some people, if you tend to maybe like lose things or break things, we do say 1 is none, 2 is 1, just because if a water filter breaks and you only had 1, if you're by yourself, you're kind of screwed. But of course, in a group, like, we're going to be okay. But that's just something we like to share.
So safety, as I mentioned, safety nerd earlier, both Sally and I have our wilderness first responders. So we are rated for search and rescue, and we carry Garmin InReaches with us. So with that being said, we've never had to use our Garmin InReach and evac anyone, but we have all the necessary training and resources available to us. Honestly, the biggest thing I'd say we encounter is dehydration with guests, folks not wanting to pee in the backcountry, so they don't drink water, and it's like a hot day, and so then they get dehydrated and little heat stroke. So we definitely push electrolytes and stuff like that. We always have med kits with us. Speaking of pee, potty time outside, kind of maybe a awkward conversation or something that is kind of like, wait, how do we do this? How do I go to the bathroom in the backcountry? A good thing to know, and it's not always crystal clear. So we provide trowels. These little shovels are called trowels, and they come with your backpacking kit. And for number 2, what you're supposed to do is dig a cat hole. Those are called cat holes. I don't know why, but about 6 inches deep, 6 inches wide. And that's where you go. And since we practice leave no trace ethics, we'll be packing out all of our toilet paper in Ziploc baggies, like double and triple bagged. This is just kind of like how to demystify what you're supposed to be doing out there. I will say, on our 3-day backpacking adventure, at our first campsite, there is a brand new pit toilet, which is so cool and so rare. The Forest Service.
And so fresh.
It's so
brand new.
Yeah. So if you're like, I don't know if I want to do this right away, then your first night, you don't have to. There's a pit toilet. And again, that's on our 3-day trip, not necessarily on our 5-day trip.
Another avoidable topic for some, or it's not talked about a lot, which is unfortunate, but we are going to talk about it because we are ladies and we're going to the backcountry, and your time of the month is coming at some point during the month. When you book a trip, it might not be the time you think it's going to be. So we provide baggies and baking soda. So the baking soda mixed with what you're using is going to neutralize that smell for bears. And it's just going to keep everything kind of like tucked in tighter with all of your smells, everything you're just going to like put together. We also are going to have hand sanitizer for you. But again, whatever we're taking in, we're bringing out. And of course, we can answer any questions about that as well. Ooh, one of our favorite parts. So the mindfulness and empowerment. We are really, really into the idea of not just being in the backcountry Now, of course, when you're outside with people nowadays, if you don't have service, most people aren't on their phones. But I noticed that, I mean, we as humans, we're just, we're on our technology a lot of the time. Out here, we won't have service. We're going to really be grounding in nature. We are most likely going to be having a yoga teacher on each of our trips, which is incredible. At least we think so.
Mhm.
Those hips get pretty tight with the backpack and all the hiking. So we'll have someone guiding yoga if that's something you want to do. Nothing is mandatory in the mindfulness empowerment aspect of our trips. We want you to come with ideas. If you want anything you want to do, we want to provide that experience. So yoga, breath work, fire meditations, water meditations. We could do cold plunges. I'm a big fan of Wim Hof, kind of just like things like that. And again, like journal prompts are an option, just any topics you want to talk about too. This trip, we don't typically look like this. We have hot water bottles in our raincoats. We have a hefty trash bag around each of our waists, and the clouds are kind of dissipating. But we were on a trip in the Bob with our lady friends, and we got hit by a crazy rainstorm. Now, were we expecting it? No, it wasn't forecasted. Were we prepared? Yes. Did we look weird? Yes. Did we survive? Yes.
Did
we
have fun?
We had so much fun.
Yes.
There might have been a few tears. Maybe. We always line our backpacks with hefty, like just these big, hefty trash bags, just because once you tie that up, if we were to get hit by a ton of rain, whatever's in your main part of your backpack isn't going to get wet because of that bag. Now, we had to pull ours out. Now I travel with two. We had to pull ours out and wrap them around our waist because it got so cold and the wind was crazy. And I had no other dry clothes at that point. I think everything got rained on.
Yeah.
Anyway, this provided hilarious stories. We laughed it wasn't safe to drive home after this trip because we had to pull over
so hard.
Yeah, it was fun.
And in these sort of challenging moments in the backcountry, we find like mindset can kind of flip a situation from really daunting to really fun. And so we try and keep everything light. Obviously, with that being said, if there is if anyone or if we're in any actual danger, we are very risk adverse and we will always make the safest decision for the group. So this was just kind of like a fun thing that happened that was like, oh, wow, we're really cold. It got us. So navigation and backcountry skills, as we've mentioned, big deal for us is to empower women in the backcountry. So what we really want to do is impart skills, navigation, and map reading. So if this is something you're interested in and you want to learn how to read a map and read contour lines and understand slope angle shading and blah, 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 talk to us, talk to me. That is my zone. I love reading maps and all of that. It's way fascinating to me. With that being said, if that's not your deal, if you're like, I just want to go out here and, stretch and drink a hot toddy at night,
we'll take care of it.
Great. That's awesome too. In addition to paper maps and having a compass, we use a couple different app map services. We use Gaia, PeakVisor, Strava, and Onyx. We actually use all of them for literally every single trip because they have great tracking and each one has a different strength. Like Gaia in particular has a great, easy, readable map system. Onyx has like the most up-to-date satellite imaging. So we kind of pull from a bunch of different maps to make the best game time decisions for our group.
And then, of course, there's the old school. Let's pull out a compass. Let's see where the sun is in the sky. All of that. We can go old school as old school can be, or we can talk about what's modern and how to read those contour lines, things like that. But there are options, and we always have a compass with us, at least two.
Yeah.
This is really cool. So I'm going to press play on here, and you'll see that Upper Holland Lake is labeled. This big lake over here is Holland Lake, but you'll be able to see kind of a bird's eye view of what we'll be hiking.
One of our trips.
So this line right here is the valley we'll be hiking through to get to Upper Holland. And then we'll be hiking up here to Sapphire Lakes and then Necklace Lakes right over here as an option, that day hike we talked about. And then we'll be coming down and coming out back this way. So that's just kind of a bird's eye view, which I think is really helpful just to see. When you read elevation gain, you're like, okay, what does that mean? But seeing the mountain, like the ridges and all that, peaks, really cool. The natural bonuses. All right, here's Gemma. Good old Gemma had never experienced sunrise or sunset in the backcountry. So here she is just having the best time of her life. Like, look at this. That is just one example, or those two things, sunrise and sunset, are examples of what you will experience in the backcountry. Starry nights here in Montana. Oh my goodness. You are going to want to sleep outside your tent. I actually, like, half the time really prefer to, but I also think sleeping in a tent is really cozy with a dog and all that. But there's so many natural bonuses, the reflection off the water, super awesome picture opportunities, or just crying, jaw dropped, drooling kind of moments. Another one, here's our mermaid little swim cove, just another great natural bonus of hiking along a gorgeous route. We like to take a dip in here and just kind of splash around and cool off. And then, oh my goodness, these beautiful wildflowers. Montana is full of them. So we'll have little field guides with us if you ever want to learn about what wildflowers we have, the medicinal benefits, things like that, endless amounts.
First, I want to distinguish, we have a couple different trip options. We have a 3-day, 2-night trip, which is what we've mostly been talking about. And then we have a 4-night, 5-day trip. And then we do custom trips, which I do want to call out. We'll absolutely guide men, family reunions on those custom trips. Talking about the 3-day trip for right now. Our day 1 is about 7 miles. It's actually a little bit less than 7 miles. Some elevation gain in there. It's pretty good. It's a good day. When you get to camp, you're pretty excited to sit down, put your legs in the lake, relax. In this next picture, that green dot is where our camp is. We only have 2 miles on our day 2, zigzagging up the side of this mountain and then wrapping around to Sapphire Lake. That is just a stunning high country alpine lake to camp at. On that day, if you're like, hey, I am happy as a clam, I want to sit here and read my book and be in silence, awesome. If you're like, hey, I want to get some more miles in without my backpack, cool. So we'll set up camp right here and then follow this path right out here to the Necklace Lakes, have a good little jaunt, come back, eat dinner. And then this photo over here to the right, this is our day 3, which is kind of a sad day because this is where we say goodbye. We get up and we hike up and over this little kind of saddle on Rogers Peak. And then we hike down the peak all the way kind of zigzagging down. That has 3,500 feet of elevation loss. So it is quite the downhill day. We do provide hiking poles. I use hiking poles. So if you're someone with knee things, this is definitely a day to wear a knee brace and hike with hiking poles. But it is gorgeous and it's exciting because at the car, there will be cold drinks and snacks waiting for us.
And prior to going downhill, soak your knee in a cold lake.
Exactly.
That's great. How to train. Can you do it? So in order to come on our trips, we do ask that you are able to hike upwards of 8 miles with at least 30 pounds on your back. Depending on where you live, some places don't have any hills, no elevation gain. But even if you're in a city, go find a hill. Climb that hill. I don't care if it's 100 times in a row. Get that elevation gain in. I've done that before when I've lived in bigger cities. I go and find this huge steep hill and I hike up it or I bike up it, whatever fitness level you need to get to, which we're kind of saying right here what you need to get to
be comfortable.
And if you don't and you can't, or you don't have the time, like this, if you come on a trip and you're like, this is my first free moment, that's okay. We're not rushing on our trips. We just want you to be comfortable. So that would help you be more comfortable.
Yeah.
A typical day. So our trips range from 2 miles to 9 miles, and then elevation gain you can see is upwards of 2,200 feet. And then of course, some days we lose over 3,000. So we have quite a bit of a range where we are hiking. And then because there will be at least Madison and myself to start, if there is a faster group or a slower group, we can split up into 2 separate groups and kind of keep it friendly that way. But again, we're not rushing on our hikes and there's no pressure to move fast. So if someone wants to go 1 mile an hour on our shorter mile days, we can do that.
Yeah. And we love snack break. I mean, part of the reason we didn't have this in the earlier slide of why we backpack, but part of the reason why we backpack is for snacks. Snacks are good. And you always pack really delicious snacks. So
it's true.
Yeah.
Is this trip for you? So I don't know if we have it listed anywhere, but we provide this trip for women of all ages, as long as you're 18 years or older. We actually have a group of 70-year-old women. There's 5 of them. They're doing a custom trip. So we'll talk about that again one last time. They're doing a custom trip and it's already a hiking group. So they're coming together and they're 70 years old and we're going to take them on a trip that's suitable for them. And that's why we offer these custom trips. We want it to be comfortable for you.
So just some good to know things so I mentioned we're located in Northwest Montana, and getting to the Flathead Valley where we're located, it can be really easy. Or if you live in a very kind of obscure place like us, it can be kind of challenging. But you basically fly into FCA or Glacier International Airport, and it is very conveniently located. It's only like 20 minutes from Whitefish, 15 minutes from Kalispell, and it's a great location for an airport. And there's direct flights from most major cities on the West Coast and the Midwest. And like, it seems like every few months they're bringing like a new direct route in, which is awesome. Logistics. So all of this stuff we email you in our pre-trip email, which comes out like multiple months before your trip departure, about pre and post trip gatherings. So how we meet up the morning of, handing out backpacks, food, talking about some logistics, and then we will end there as well. We'd love to sit down, grab a beer, talk about the trip, laugh. So again, what's included? All gear. So that means backpack, tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, headlamp, cook system, and more. So like trowel, like all of these, pillow, all of these things are all included. Meals, so all your meals, snacks, drinks, electrolytes, coffee, tea, creamer, we have that. And yeah, a fun time. We'll have a good time.
We just want to say how excited we are about this entire business of ours, and the fact that we love doing what we love, or just doing, look at our friends there. We're just having the best time ever. We want to invite other women to experience this with us. We want to teach. We want to learn, we want to be grounded and empowered, and do that with other ladies. And we also want to thank 57 Hours, because this was a great opportunity, and they are wonderful. Their communication is superb. Everything about 57 Hours is just
great company. Here's a review you can read from Emily, a guest we had from New Hampshire. She had a great time, and we had a great time with her as well. So,
and here we are, another joyful, that was a windy picture. I think there was a video of me leaning forward and the wind is just like holding me up. And pretty great. Men, you are welcome on those. If you want to do a family trip, parent-child sort of dynamic with other friends, anything like that, we want to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it. And big thanks to 57 Hours.